You guys, thank you all for coming to today's event. And yeah, let's give it up. Yeah. Thank you guys for everybody who sponsors us, and thank you guys for joining us here today. I'm really honored to just be sitting here and listening to you guys. And I want to start off by saying you guys are just like great people, not only in the AI space, but also in the funding and startup world. And so with that being said, Ken, you've invested in 300 startups, and some of those are unicorns. And Ramesh, you're the founder and CTO of Windox. You guys are specializing in synthetic data and the virtualization of data. And Sube, you manage the global accelerator and incubator partnerships at Google. All of this is really amazing stuff. But real quick, without me introducing you guys, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the background music, by the way. It's really nice. Yeah, we're like in an elevator. I love it. I love it. No. So my name is Subhadeep. I think I know many of you, but for those of you who I don't know, I work at Google Cloud. I wore this T-shirt to make this easy marketing statement here. But I work with a lot of founders across the globe, and I'm lucky to be here in Seattle and to be able to meet with you guys in person. On a day-to-day basis, what do I do? Someone asked me earlier while I was walking around. I just help unblock any blockers at Google for founders.
Yeah, I'm Ramesh. I'll date myself here. I was one of the first 5 product managers on what is now called Windows. So it was a long time back. And my first, fresh out of college, I demoed to an audience of 1,000 people in a keynote that you could transfer a file from Windows to Unix. So that was the first revolution I went through with networking. The second revolution was .coms, where I started AskMe.com, which became a top 100 website. And at that time, raising 15-20 million, which I did, was considered peanuts and was not enough to get an article in any magazine. And so for me, more recently, I'm running a company called Windox, which is a cash flow-based startup, which is profitable with just dollars, 100% product revenue. But the people around me were a lot smarter than me, so they said, hey, why don't you take all of this stuff and do the same thing with LLMs? And so now we have something that we're working on in Stealth, which is a fairly big concept that is essentially about how do you orchestrate and govern LLMs while they use enterprise databases. So that's not yet been announced any formally, but we're in stealth mode on that right now.
Hi, Ken Morimoto. I've actually been in AI since 2018, before it got super popular, Scale AI, Amazon. Currently with Innodata, we actually are a $300 million run rate company doing a lot of the RLHF red teaming for the foundation models. We also built a few vertical kind of SaaS offerings for the financial and insurance industry using taking a lot of unstructured data sets and structuring it with LLMs and traditional BERT models. I'm also a partner at Leading Edge Ventures, actively investing in AI infra and B2B SaaS. And I've been investing since 2015 and been fortunate to have several unicorns in my portfolio, but they're not liquid yet. Actually, a few recently are going liquid, but it's a 10 to 12 year journey when it comes to investing, if you get lucky.
All right, great. That sounds really great from each and every one of you. So let's jump straight into the questions. So right now, with the company scaling so fast, whether that's in AI or any other industry, how do you guys actually decide whether something has a real moat or if it doesn't?
Ramesh, you want to take it first?
Boy, this is how Google works, I guess, pass the potato.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is, in my view, it's very difficult to answer this question generically. I mean, every business, even every sub-business has its own moat. I'll just talk to you about some of the moats I saw. In Windows, it was very simple. IBM was the distributor. When they fought with OS2, I guess these names are probably not familiar, but they used a smart marketing tactic of providing 2 products that can sandwich a product in the middle, a competitor's product. But moat is generally like, I'll also, rather than give you my views, I'll give you the views I've heard from people who achieved much more. I had the opportunity to meet the VC who funded Salesforce, the partner there, and there it was all money. What I was told was there was so many startups doing SaaS CRM. Salesforce was one of like 100, and the only reason Salesforce won was because it raised like $100 million plus. So in that case, it was money. Yeah, so it's usually technology or money. And in the things I've seen with Microsoft, it's mostly been how do you become the best product in its category? With my own startup, it's been how do I create something like Windocs, for example, our current product, which has been around for a few years. It's about how do you get something that is so unique, but could be a very small market, but is so unique that there's no argument. So I would say, rather than answering your question, what is a moat? I'd say the test for whether you have a moat is when you go pitch your product or service, is there an argument against it? If people are arguing against it and you're a startup, you've already lost. So find something that nobody will argue with.
We talk about moats all the time, especially when it comes to investing, but moats effing execution, right? At the end of the day, there aren't that many moats. Obviously, we're looking for a technical moat, but most biggest moat that we find is just the people, right? In terms of do you have the dream team that deeply understands the domain problem and can execute? Things are definitely changing in the AI space. Obviously, data is the biggest moat. AI is just simply data and computation. So if you can show that you do have some proprietary data with understanding the domain-specific workflows or problems you're solving, that's actually definitely a moat. But I think in this time of day, when I look for startups that are doing really well in my portfolio, they just know how to build, listen to customers, and iterate fast and just execute. So I think execution is the ultimate moat.
Back to you, Sue.
Oh, I think we lost. So I'm going to share what we think at Google kind of as a moat. One of the things that when we look at go-to-market at Google and our products and services, it's about how much value does different products create. So for example, if we're looking at GPUs and CPUs, let me know if I'm getting too technical on what we offer, but if we're looking at that, there's not much of a moat. You could go to a lot of different providers with a GPU from NVIDIA. But when you talk about other services that it creates value for our developers and our founders, such as serverless architecture, serverless systems like Cloud Run, that's just one example, or GKE, things like that. That creates a higher level of value where it's more difficult for people to just leave Google and go somewhere else. So that's how we look at when we talk on go-to-market, how does that help us, and how do we position different products and services? So think about value to your customer, and how do you make that as high as possible?
Yeah, okay, I think those are all really great answers, from the value to the customer. You're talking about how the moat really relies on the people itself. And then, yeah, I think those are all really great. And I want to really say, for you guys, from what you guys have seen and each of your vantage points, what separates the best founders from the worst? Just a very generic question. But
I think people who have hustle, people who I see every week, multiple times a week, are the good founders. Very simple answer.
So in addition to being a founder, I also am an investor in a couple of the funds here, so primarily PSL. And to me, I like founders who have a lot of humility to know that, yeah, I could be wrong on this, and who is willing to learn and figure it out, as opposed to I know it all.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. I think from my 10 years of just data, it's grit, the people who have the passion and grit to solve the problem, and also being self-aware that they can pivot. For example, I invested in a company called Motion, and they had to pivot 20 times to find product market fit, and they recently raised at a $600 million valuation. I invested at a $6 million post, and the grit that this guy had, it was just so inspirational. And I've had many other startup founders that quit because it just got too tough, and they can make $1 million at Meta or Google, right? And so that grit and passion is I think the number one most important thing if you want to start a company. So Vaibhav is a good example of grit and passion wherever he is. And he's a portfolio company, so.
yeah, right back there.
There you go.
Yeah, I think humility, hustle, grit, those are all really great things, but I really want to stress the point that a lot of people kind of give this advice, and they say that they look for this in founders, but how do people who are building companies actually attain these qualities, and what do they need to do to showcase to people that they have humility, that they have grit, and they have all of these things?
Yeah, you've seen a lot more founders.
You know, you are who you are. You know, you can't just become someone who you're not. So I think it's important to be true to yourself. And by the way, if it's not, I founded 2 companies myself and sold them successfully, but it's okay to work at Google or Microsoft. You were at there's different paths and different times of your life. You have to look at when it's the right time and when you feel that urge and that burning desire to change the world.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think you are who you are. So,
Yeah, I actually study a lot of neuroscience, and I went through the debate about free will and determinism, and it just depends on how you define free will, but it's nature and nurture. Do you really control any of those? But I think, for me, when we evaluate founders, this is from Paige Craig. If you can Google him, he's all about human factors in terms of investing in founders with grit. He doesn't even like to talk about their business idea. So he actually looks at like some of the biggest challenges they overcome as childhood. Like he loves founders with chip on their shoulders and they want to prove the world. And so I do try to dive deep in terms of the background in terms of like, what are some of the biggest challenges they had to overcome in life, And sometimes people who had the most difficult, challenging childhoods and show that type of grit, those are really good signals, and that's what I learned from my, friend Paige Craig, who invested in, Scale AI, Lyft, ID.me, probably one of the most iconic companies, arguably one of the best angel investors on the planet. So he's strictly a human factors guy, and he's looking for that grit, and he looks at the childhood history of how they overcome. And he loves childhood history where they had almost traumatic and challenging childhoods. It's not a prerequisite. Look at Mark Zuckerberg or Microsoft. Bill Gates. They have some really good lives, but it's interesting when he mentioned that is a characteristic you look for.
Great. I think those are all really applicable, and those are great things to look for. Right now, everything. Do you guys think, or everything is moving so fast? What do you guys think isn't moving fast enough?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know why I took the mic from you.
Nuclear for power.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if things are moving fast enough because I've seen an era of the dot-coms where things were moving faster, if you can believe it. And then even with the first revolution of the networking revolution, I mean, things were, I think, I would say that there's a lot of activity right now and experimentation in this space. So I think the adoption and actual return is not happening quickly enough. Mm-hmm. That's how I would characterize it in the AI LLM space.
Actually, I do have something to say on this. I think education's not happening fast enough. The right type of education, especially in the enterprises, they're still very slow in adopting and trying new things and changing their processes. If you look at the market out there, the total addressable market in manufacturing and supply chain management, they're still moving extremely, extremely slow. And I think that needs to move faster for all of us to make sure this wave does not crash over us and we all lose money.
I think just like one of the things people complain about is to make AI work, you need electricity. So right now there's a big shortage in US for electricity power. And so that is kind of the main bottleneck right now for, in terms of like the laggard in terms of keeping up with the pace of AI.
I'm going to add to Soup's point, which is we're personally experiencing this. We're in a space where it is so obvious what we're doing. We're basically saying we're going to launch a product that is going to orchestrate and govern LLMs as it uses databases. I'm actually surprised why there is like 25 companies not already doing this and having adoption. So I'm quite shocked that, but I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
All right, great. So when you guys think about the AI stack, whether that's infrastructure or applications, where do you guys personally see the biggest opportunity for the founders right now?
I mean, do you want to specify the question a little more? Are you looking for like product areas or
Yeah.
just?
Kind of more on, this is also again for the founders that are sitting here today. How would you respond to this question in order to help them the most?
I think it's always the same thing, no matter whether it's AI or networking, or it's always like, who's going to be the first few people who are going to buy your product? And that's always the hardest thing. And unless you have something unique, you'll get kicked out. I mean, if you try to have something that a bigger gorilla is already selling, you're not going to make it. So I don't really see it much about, I mean, certainly you can say, hey, look, LLMs are doing a lot more than they did 2 years ago. Sure, do something with LLMs. I don't know if that's the gist of your question. I mean, I'd go back to what Soup said. It's like, what can you remove? What fear can you remove that will help people adopt this AI stuff? And the education is another big thing. I mean, it's astounding to see how many people, employees and companies are still not using LLMs for what they're doing today. So there's something about this education/fear of adoption. So I think that removing that fear, I mean, that's something we're trying to do. We're saying, hey, we're going to make it safe for you to use LLMs with enterprise databases. So in some sense, I'm doing that. So removing the fear, I guess that would be the short answer.
What do you think is the biggest roadblock that these people face when they're trying to adapt these sort of LLMs?
Yeah, so change management, has been like a study in like business schools for like decades, right? So there's change, people want to hold on to their jobs. It's mostly fear. Like, I don't want to lose my job. Oh, if I adopt that, then that product is going to remove my job or somebody else is going to become bigger. So it's always the same thing. Like, how do you get them to change? And what can you align with in an organization that helps them change, remove the fear, etc.
Yeah, I'm going to play off of you as well because we are all, I'm assuming, and I know a few of you guys, and I'd love to meet everyone here, but don't underestimate. I spent 3 years at PwC doing change management at Microsoft and other places when they're going from selling CDs to Office 365, changing the whole business model, changing the whole sales force. So they're probably amazing product leaders, and you guys are like, I have the best product ever for everybody in the world. But you have to understand who that world is much better, and you have to help them follow that path. I've done 25 years worth of sales, enterprise sales. You have to take them down the journey and show them the way. You have to hold their hand at every step of the way, and it doesn't matter how many PhDs they have. I've met a lot of them, and how many companies or how many VCs they are. You have to show them the way. So even your investor, your founder, your co-founders, because you have that vision, you need to take them along. And you take on everybody else along with you. That's how I'd look at it.
I mean, my advice for people who want to found companies is fall in love with the problem that you're solving. I think that's the most important thing, that you can't sleep at night because the problem is nagging at you. I do want to start a company again someday. I had a company early in the 2000s as well, and it actually hit a $3 to $4 million run rate. It was more in the arbitrage business, not in AI. But if a founder is just so obsessed with the problem, I think that's a good tell that you may be onto a right idea, and then validate that through 10, 20, as many calls with prospects as possible, and validate that it's a problem for them, and if they're willing to pay for it. But yeah, find that problem that you just can't, you just nags at you at night, and you just feel like you have to solve it, or else it's just too hard.
Great. Yeah, I think that's all really amazing and solid advice. And Sub, I have a question for you. You evaluate founders across 300 different accelerators today. What are some of those big accelerators? And then I'll ask a follow-up on that.
Sorry, what's the question is, what are the big...
what are the big accelerators that you're currently evaluating or looking at?
So, I mean, we work with YC. I hope there are other accelerators. YC pumps out they find incredible companies, and I see that from the data that I get. Then you have like the YCs, the Stanford, some of the universities have great accelerators. Berkeley, Stanford, Cornell are doing very well. We also see, I'll talk about Europe too, because I feel like I always ignore the rest of the world when I'm in Seattle. But like Utnam or Tim, Lanzadera in Madrid, There's some amazing Singapore. I know that Pablo is heading to Singapore soon. There's some amazing startups and founders there and universities that I think that Google and other cloud providers could provide much better support for. So it's hard to say like which one's the best, but usually they're the accelerators that invest in their founders and put the money where their mouth is, they tend to do better. Money, back to money. Yeah.
So specifically in AI, what's one pattern that you see in the teams that make them consistently get selected versus the ones that just don't make the cut?
I have to think about that one. That's
Like in terms
Like
of
what-
being hired, in terms of getting into these kind of areas, these incubators and stuff.
Oh, accelerate. Okay.
Yeah, accelerators. Sorry.
Well, I think, so, yeah, a lot of startups come to me and say, okay, which accelerators? I mean, you have to try to go for YC and like Y500 and some of these top accelerators, or Neo, sure. There's a maybe like 20 or 30 of them around the world. So it's just like applying to college. If you could get into Stanford, I would suggest you go. But you have to try for those. And then I think just getting in an accelerator, if you're a first-time founder especially, and you have no idea what's going on, it's much better to go to those and come to a bunch of talks from people. You need to learn this business. I think you learn a lot. They're there to help you. So, and then also try to align with an accelerator where they have mentors that know your side, like the business, the area that you're going to go into. Don't just like randomly go to an accelerator. See how they can help you, because you have to understand there's limited amount of time in this world, and you are not going to live forever. So you need to make sure you spend your time very judiciously with the people that can help you succeed.
Great. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And this question is kind of for all of you. So what's something that you guys see founders obsess over, and you guys think doesn't really ultimately matter, and what's something that they're really just forgetting?
Oh, founders, especially the tech ones, usually obsess over the product. And that's usually, not a smart thing to do. I think that you have to, it's very easy to say this, probably it's a very cliched phrase, but, how does that other guy with the check, how do they see it? That you might have the best, piece of technology, but, it may be a complete, miss for the other person. So it's very easy to say, and unless there's a very specific product and specific customer, it's very difficult to understand how they see it. So I think that's kind of what I'd say. Obsessing over the product is sometimes can be counterproductive.
Quick question. All three of you said obsess about the product over and over again. Just share an anecdote of what does obsess about the product mean from a tangible perspective?
We're looking for an example, or at least a fictitious example, I guess. So let's say you're developing something on the networking side, and there's a protocol involved, right? And as a good engineer, you will say that, look, actually, let me give you an actual concrete example. So I had the fortune in my first job out of college to work with the guy who built the first TCP IP stack. And he built it for this company called Ungerman Bass or something like that. So, I guess you guys know what TCP IP is, right? Yeah. So he was a lot older than me, and he was a very seasoned guy. And, the product I worked with him, he was continuously obsessed about getting the last piece of the compiler working. This is a fairly advanced compiler. So the obsession was, how do you make sure that the step that comes after a parser, how do you make that work for multiple different languages? And then I was fresh out of college, but Microsoft encouraged people to just speak their mind. So I kept saying where is the guy who's writing the code and compiling it with your stuff? And there was nobody. So I kept saying, how far are you going to push this thing until you actually get somebody who's going to put a real production application code through this compiler? So that would be an example. Does that answer your question, Vaibhav? Okay. You guys have any examples?
Yeah, I have I have another example. I mean, I remember when I was building my own product when we started Down Ticket. It's a platform for micro donations to any political candidate across the country. Down Ticket from the president, and we were just so focused on this is what we thought was just the right way to go, and doesn't matter what anybody else says, we got this, and we're so focused on the product and make it just perfect for us that we lost sight the fact that Republicans and Democrats are just never going to get along, and they don't want to work together at all. Maybe they might on certain things when they're trading dollars, but in a fundraising type of view, they weren't. And we were so obsessed on the product rather than just breaking it apart. It would have been way more successful supporting both the parties separately on two separate platforms. So that was my own personal obsession. And then also, when you're talking about obsession, like, don't get to a point where you're just completely blinded, because that's what happens. You will go crazy. Like literally go crazy. So you need to be in that crazy, but yet like have some sense of reality. Like it's a very difficult thing because you need to have that vision and that obsession, but you also need to come down to the real world very once in a while, right? To know what's happening, what your customers want, what other people need, and what the value they're finding out of it.
Yeah, true that, Soup.
Yeah, so after you were talking about the YC funding and investors, I was curious, like, at what stage should a startup apply for funding from investors?
You mean after YC or people?
Like, as a fresh startup, at what stage should the startup?
I mean, YC, plug and play, Neo, they'll accept you pre-revenue, as long as you have a co-founder for YC, very, very early on. So if you have a right idea and a good co-founder, you should apply right away. Time is everything. So, but back to a quick question. Like, obsession of a product is great, but you have to be obsessed on the right things that customers want. Like, recently, one of my portfolio companies, they were sort of stagnant, but they were very obsessed in terms of like listening to the customers' pain points, and so they built obsessively a new feature, and now they're back to high growth. So it's being obsessed on the right things, I think, from listening to customers.
Yeah, great. Those are all really great answers. And if someone here wanted to build a company, whether that was in AI or not, that lasted, like, let's say 10 plus years rather than just 10 months, what's the difference? What do they have to do in order to get growth that stays consistent rather than just right now?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just customer obsession, and the customers is going to validate whether you're going to exist or not in the next 5, 10 years. And so whenever I get pitched on ideas, I'm always like, did you speak with 10 to 20 customers and validate that they want the product? Paul Graham says it very simply, build things that people want, and it's as simple as that. But you don't know what they want unless you talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, look, you have to build a cult. You have to, you are a leader, or like you're going to be a religious leader of whatever your product is. Build a cult. I cannot get any of you guys to leave your iPhone. It's obsessed, like crazy. You're obsessed with it. For me to fight against AWS for the last 7 years at Google, it is so hard. Because once you start building that cult, or Windows, my God. If you try to go to manufacturing, try to get them to get off of Windows and get on GCP or something like that, so hard to do. So hard to do. So you have to build a cult that are like, not just, it's not about you. It is about something way bigger, and you're bringing a lot of people, and then they just cannot leave you. They will never leave you.
Yeah, I'll give you something more concrete, though I can't match the cult thing, so. So I don't know whether I should just give up on this answer. So I think I'll answer your question as it pertains to founders who are starting out early stages. I think you have to go ask for the dollars from people, or you have to change, and if you're not getting the dollars, change what you're offering. And most people I see, they go to friendlies, they'll go here, they'll talk. You have to ask for the dollars, and it's like, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sam Altman also says anybody who you go to, even if they're friends or family, still ask them to pay for your product, still ask them to pay, and ask if they would pay even if I wasn't your friend. So I think that's really great advice that you have. And for you specifically, you've scaled AskMe.com to a top 100 global site. And so what are the biggest lessons that you've learned from that, and what experience from that do you apply even today or tell people to apply?
So the AskMe.com experience, it's a double-edged sword, because we were doing what everybody else was doing and succeeding in raising gobs of money, and in the end, it turned out to be the wrong thing. So I think, and I'll go back to the same thing, right? It's like we never asked for the money in AskMe.com because we didn't have to. We asked the money from VCs. We never asked it from customers, end users, nothing. So it's the same answer. So there you go, 2 for 1.
Okay. All right, great. And then Ken, specifically for you, as you've backed 7 different unicorns, looking back, what was the earliest moment that you thought, like before the big traction, where you were like, yeah, these companies are gonna get big, these companies are gonna break out?
I mean, it's survivor bias. I've done over 300 and most don't work out. But I mean, at the end of the day, if I do pre-seed and seed, it's just the team. Like, we look at the quality of the team, and that they're obsessed with the problem, and the most you can do is just with that information and just understanding. And it can be de-risk a lot from, if they have real customers that you can validate. But I've done many investments that are just napkins, and it just comes down to the passion of the team. Team is just the whole it's conscious representation of the product, right? So it's team.
So in general about AI, what excites you guys the most? And with that, what scares you guys at the exact same time?
So I think the capabilities of the LLMs are like, I think it's one answer to both your questions. It both excites me and scares me. I mean, it's exciting because, you can see that a lot of, you can see that it's going to do a lot of things on its own with some governance. The scary thing is it's going to turn the world upside down with a lot of people losing jobs, which is already happening.
Go ahead.
Oh, boys, Google, they really teach you how.
I mean, I think AI is a tool. Generally, it's going to be used for good and for bad. I think, there's going to be repercussions in terms of the job market, and we see that now in a lot of the entry-level jobs. But I think net is going to create more jobs, hopefully. But I'm still more of a think that's going to be a tough transition. I'm very afraid of just we lack as species of critical thinking, so we survive on survivor bias based on AI feeding you information that you want to see. And I think I just had a dinner with a round table, and they have young kids, and it's great to use that as a coach, but if you're using it to get answers and not understanding how you got to the answer, I mean, we're going to lose a lot of that critical thinking, and that's going to be a net negative, in terms of being like influenced for political or many different ideology that is not ground truth or truthful. So it's going to be, we live in interesting times. I think it's good for every one of us to really be conscious that AI is a tool, and also be conscious that you have to understand that LLMs hallucinate, and you have to be very careful of really, like, when you see videos or information, like, is this objective truth? But again, what is objective truth? So that's a difficult problem.
You still have to answer soon.
I still have to answer. What I'm most excited about is is robotics. So what's that bridge between the digital world and the physical world? And I think that's going to be the largest thing that I'm most excited about, because once we're able to have robotics, then space exploration, universal exploration is going to completely change, and we have to figure out quantum computing and things like that in order for us to really bridge that gap. So that's what I'm most excited about is robotics. I think everything else is kind of boring. Because it's like process automation and stuff like that. It's just kind of, we have to do all that to like really do some amazing things.
So as of now, what industries do you guys think AI is going to kind of hit at first, and what is going to take longer, more trust with it? People, what's going to be something where AI hits a little later?
I think first is going to be software development, and we've already kind of stating the obvious, but that is the first. So we'll see the revolution of SaaSes and all these like cursors and Level Labs and Gamma and all these guys are going to come out so that people could start building some other incredible experiences. So the tools have to be there, like from the bottom up. So that's what's happening right now. And then you'll have these applications that are going to be amazing, and then you're going to have the bridge between the digital and the physical world. And also in the retail is still a little bit behind. I don't know if you've tried to search for anything or matching things. We're doing a remodel right now. It's like horrible experience. So that's all going to get redone, and there's going to be a ton of money to be made in retail as well. That's the next big wave.
I'm going to do what you do.
I actually think that humanoids is a little going to take a lot longer than what people think is going to take. I think, humanoids. I think it's going to be much longer than what people anticipate. I mean, I would love to have a cook cleaner at my home, but I still think we're a decade away. I hope I'm wrong. So, and then in terms of even agentic AI, right? I mean, they say 95% is failing in production. I mean, 90% of data is still unstructured, and to really get agentic AI to work, like you have to really ensure that you have the right data available, and I think that's going to be, and depending on the use case, there's going to be adoption. Like narrow niche use cases is going to flourish, and there's going to be some ROI on that. You know, like manual paperwork, unstructured data sets. You know, in finance and legal, and taking unstructured and structuring it using LLMs or AI. But in terms of like taking time, I really feel like humanoids is still a decade away. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but it's a pretty hard problem.
We lost the fuzzy.
I have no idea where it is.
Okay, do it on you.
It's okay. Go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll answer your question by just giving you two characteristics of industries that will, lose jobs or change quickly. It's basically, one is the same as before. Which industries are more open to change? And they'll adopt it quickly, and there'll be more job losses or whatever there. The second is which ones are more regulated. They're not going to use AI that easily. So if you say finance and healthcare, they're less likely to change, and they're more regulated. And like Soup said, software is like usually more open to change and zero regulation. That's why you're seeing all the job losses over there. I mean, I would add stuff like all kinds of research, analysis, all those jobs are going to go. But I actually think that, having been through like 3 revolutions, now this is the 3rd one, I mean, there's always the fear, oh boy, this is going to like kill things and so on. There's always a new thing you'll do with the new technology. So you start with, so I'm actually pretty optimistic about the US in particular. Everybody's like, oh, US is in decline. I think this AI is going to save the US. I think we're going to be back on top again.
With the US being saved, that's all I have today. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, thank you guys.